This is a rocket coming home. You have watched this happen 400 times. Grid fins, legs, a landing burn. On Friday, China brought a booster home for the first time. Every headline filed it as the same thing. It isn't. That rocket had no legs. A ship caught it, hooks first, into a grid of steel cable. The idea has a patent number, filed in 2011 by an American. Nobody ever built it. 5 stories tonight, and every one of them is about the same half of the job, the half nobody used to care about. Not getting up there. Getting back down? A booster caught in a net. The startup renting the ride down is a factory floor. And an argument that the one thing nobody should ever bring home is a rock from Mars? 2 more after that, and one of them takes a black hole away from you. Friday, 4:15 UTC. The Long March 10B lifted off from Wenchang on Hainan, 63 meters, 760 tons on the pad. About 6 minutes after stage separation, the first stage came down onto a ship. Not onto legs. Onto 4 hooks, which caught a tension grid of cables strung across the deck. It is not a landing system. It is a resting gear. And that is their word, not mine. The figure from the engineering paper the system is built on labels it arresting cable A, arresting cable B, sliding car, capture box. 4 LiDAR units, 1 per corner. The people who designed this wrote a carrier deck on the drawing, which is a different bet from this one. SpaceX and Blue Origin put the recovery hardware on the rocket, legs, and the structure to hold them. Mass you carry all the way up and all the way back, every flight. China took that mass off the rocket and put it on the boat, 25,000 tons, holding station on thrusters, catching machinery bolted to the deck. Lighter rocket. More payload. In exchange, the entire load path now ends in something that is moving on the ocean. Every launch? Forever. Now the part nobody is reporting. The idea has a patent number. United States 8498756. File 2011. Granted 2013. Assignee NASA. And the abstract opens, a reusable spaceflight launch system configured to eliminate complex descent and landing systems from the spaceflight hardware and moves them to maneuverable ground-based systems. That sentence is what China flew on Friday. And a second American patent, granted 2020, draws it almost exactly, cables strung between towers on the open sea, boosters coming down into them. NASA's version comes down under a parachute, onto a hovercraft. So the mechanism is not what flew. But look at the references column on its own front page. It cites Besxar. By 2013, the whole design space was mapped, cross-referenced, and public. 2 of those ideas got built by Americans. The third was filed by an American and never built. 1 booster has come home once. The day before, a Falcon 9 came home for the 36th time. That gap is not the interesting number. This is, CASC says it will refly this exact stage before the end of the year. It is the only falsifiable thing in the story. Everything else is missing. Every person quoted about this catch works for CASC, the organization that built the rocket. The satellite it launched has never been named. No purpose, no orbit. And the only sea-state figure anywhere in this story comes from that American patent. Sea-state 4. Nobody has said what the sea was doing off Hainan on Friday. The rocket came back. The information did not. That is one way to make the trip down pay. Take the legs off the rocket. Here is another. Rent the trip out. On the 5th of July, a Falcon 9 lifted off from Cape Canaveral with a batch of Starlink satellites. Bolted to the booster. Not the payload stack. The booster were 2 boxes about the size of a microwave oven from a Washington startup called Besxar. They never reach orbit. They ride the first stage's arc, up past 115 kilometers, and come back down with it. The ride down is the product. And the pitch is not microgravity. It is vacuum, that the vacuum up there beats anything the semiconductor fab on Earth can pump down to. So I'd put a number on that because it is the whole company. Ultra-high vacuum by the ISO standard starts at 10 to the minus 6 pascals. The ambient pressure where those pods fly is about 30 millipascals. That is 4 orders of magnitude short and worse than a chamber a fab already owns. It can be done. NASA and the University of Houston flew this exact thesis in the 1990s. The Wake Shield facility, a free-flying disk that reached 10 to the -10 torr and grew real semiconductor films in orbit. But red light worked. The disk swept a vacuum in its own wake. The altitude did not do that. The shape did. A pod bolted to the side of an octaweb has no wake. And what was actually inside those 2 boxes? Wafers, made in a factory on Earth. The experiment was whether a wafer survives the trip without cracking. Nothing was manufactured. The founder, Ashley Polipison, calls it the ultimate egg drop challenge, the most honest sentence anyone has said about in-space manufacturing this year. The launch contract came first, 12 flights, 24 pods, signed last October. The survivability test came 9 months later. And as of tonight, nobody has published whether those 2 wafers came back intact. Eric Lasker runs revenue at Varda, the one company that has flown and recovered manufacturing capsules. His line, last October, "There are no products manufactured in space sitting back down on the ground that you or I could go buy." And SpaceX sold Besxar those 12 rides. SpaceX is also listed as an investor in Besxar. The landlord owns a piece of the tenant. The physics is real. The Wake Shield settled that 30 years ago, and it still never became a business. But a company whose entire thesis is a vacuum level has never once said what vacuum level it achieves. Those 2 are about a machine surviving the trip. This next one is about a slab of concrete that came home from orbit stronger than the batch that never left the drawer. Nobody can tell you why. Not the press release. Not the lab that made it. Bolted to the outside of the International Space Station is a rack called Movable TAs, exposed to raw space. For 201 days, 3,216 orbits, one of those trays held small plates of concrete. Not concrete exactly. Geopolymer, simulated moon dust and simulated Mars dust, set with a chemical activator called sodium silicate instead of cement. It comes out of a lab at the University of Delaware, run by Norman Wagner. They came home stronger. The lunar simulant plates that flew averaged 60.3 megapascals of compressive strength. The identical plates that stayed in a drawer in Delaware, 44.7. The press release calls that statistically significant. I cannot check it. The paper is paywalled, the sample count is not published, and nobody has offered a mechanism. Not the release, not the lab. Here is why anyone cares, and it is not the habitat. Wagner's own papers put the landing pad at the center of this. The second lander that comes down beside the first one sandblasts it, and Artemis-class landers throw ejecta far harder than Apollo ever did. You need a hard surface, and you cannot ship a hard surface from Earth. So build it from the dust that is already there, with minimal additives. Wagner's own earlier paper price is minimal, about half a kilogram of Earth chemistry per square meter of moon. The small pad is feasible. That is a real answer. It is just not the same answer as, we will make it out of moon dust. And the same lab found something harder 4 years ago. They tried curing this material in a vacuum. Every simulant came out weaker, and they watched the activating solution boil out of the mix before it could set. Their words, curing on the lunar surface may require some pressurization. To build the moon base out of moon dust, you may first need a pressurized building on the moon to make the moon dust in. And the pad has never been tested at pad temperatures. The author's own paper puts rocket blast at up to 1200 degrees Celsius. Their binders have been tested to 600. Their conclusion, not mine, exposure to a true rocket engine will be necessary before implementation is possible. That is the case for hauling another world's material home. Here is the case for never doing it again. There are more than 30 sealed tubes of Mars sitting in Jezero crater, cored and capped by Perseverance, waiting for a ride that Congress canceled in January. A paper out last month argues that those samples, and any sample from anywhere, should never touch Earth at all. Build a quarantine facility on the moon. Route everything through it. Handle all of it with robots. It is by Frederick Moxley and Anthony Ricciardi in the journal Ambio, and Ricciardi is not a planetary protection officer. He is an invasive species ecologist. That is the whole argument. What an organism does when it lands in the wrong place justifies, in his words, a strong precautionary approach against introductions of extraterrestrial origin. Earth ecology, imported into spaceflight. It is also a policy paper with no policy in it, no cost, no schedule, no power budget, and no outside specialist has answered it. I went looking. There is not one. Because there is a rule book. Mars sample returned is already classified restricted Earth return. It already requires containment equivalent to a BSL-4 laboratory. So the paper is not adding a requirement. It is moving the one that exists 384,000 kilometers away onto the body that same rulebook treats as the least protected place in the solar system. And one detail I have only secondhand, so I will say so. I have not seen the paper's figure myself, only the write-ups that reproduce it. In them, the lunar containment is labeled BSL-5. There is no BSL-5. The scale stops at 4. This experiment has been run. 1969. Isolation garments, a sealed trailer on the carrier deck, a receiving laboratory in Houston, an interagency committee chaired by the head of the CDC with veto power over NASA, a president talking to 3 men through a window. That laboratory was first sketched at 100 square feet. It was built at 86,000. And it leaked anyway. The isolation garments came off with seawater inside them. An autoclave sprayed 4 laboratory staff with contaminated liquid. 6 people ended up quarantined inside the lab. The protocol survived 3 of 6 landings, and it was dropped not because anyone proved the moon was sterile, but because it was expensive and inconvenient. So my problem with the lunar facility is not the precaution. It is the arithmetic. A containment lab on the moon does not remove failure modes. It adds them. You build it, power it through a 2-week night at -170, keep it sterile, run it with robots, and then you still fly the samples home afterwards. The last box in the chain is the box that already existed. Meanwhile, the samples are being handled by somebody else. China's Tianwen-3 launches in the 2028 window, drills 2 meters, and brings home at least 500 grams around 2031 into a receiving laboratory already being built outside Haifi with its own biosafety areas. Nobody has asked them to route it through the moon. Nothing comes home in this one. The only thing that moved is a number, and it moved because somebody finally checked how it had been measured. It never was. For 3 years, the story about the early universe has been that Webb keeps finding black holes that are too big, too early, monsters that should not have had the time to grow. Here is how you weigh one. You do not. You take a spectrum, measure how wide one emission line is, assume the gas making that line is orbiting the black hole, and multiply by a calibration constant. Width in, mass out. That sits under every one of these objects. But new paper in astronomy and astrophysics, Alessandro Trinca is the lead author, took 14 of them and analyzed the emission line and the X-ray silence together in one model instead of as 2 separate puzzles. The answer came back in 2 pieces. Either these are enormous black holes barely feeding at all, which the physics does not like, or they are small ones feeding far above the theoretical speed limit. And you can read that straight off the plot. Their reference object comes out at log 5.65 plus 2.12 minus 0.42. The plus 2 is not an uncertainty. It is the other answer still sitting there. 1 cause, 2 symptoms. A black hole feeding that hard smothers its own X-ray corona. So Chandra sees nothing, and it distorts the very emission line you are measuring. Those 2 symptoms had been read as independent evidence of 2 different things. And Trinca's group is not alone in the conclusion, only in the mechanism. A separate team stacked 400 megaseconds of Chandra time on 55 of these objects and came out the other side with the same casualty. The mass. Back on the 10th of June, about a different Webb black hole, I said the X-ray silence cuts both ways and that I wanted an independent team before uncorking anything. Half of that aged well. The other half did not. Trinket co-wrote the 2024 paper that proposed this mechanism. This is the same group welding its own two arguments together and testing the weld. A better test, not the independent check I asked for. I'm not cashing that prediction tonight. The black holes are probably still heavier than their galaxies should allow, just not impossibly so. 5 stories, 1 shape. The trip up is solved. Everything hard is now on the way back down. And the one thing I would actually keep an eye on is a date. CASC says that booster flies again before the end of the year. If it does, the catch was engineering. If it does not, it was a